This storm, I don't think was any storm at all. This storm was actually a test by Jesus, helping his disciples to once again figure out who he actually is. Jesus sent the disciples on the boat across the lake, knowing that a storm was going to come. Go out ahead of me. I didn't think God sent us out into storms. Well, apparently he does sometimes, because he wants us to see that he is in control. Jesus didn't say, wind, be quiet, storm, go away. All he did was step into the boat and everything went silent. Jesus, I think, was frustrated in this moment because he wanted them to understand who he was. And he did this incredible miracle at dinner time, and they had totally forgotten about who he was by the time they were halfway across the lake, thinking they're gonna die. All right, we're calling this one The Leftovers Part 2. Yeah, I tried to get creative and it wasn't working. But you'll find out. It works. And let me read something to you quick, and then we will talk about some things. Matthew 14, starting in verse 22, it says this: Immediately Jesus made the disciples get into the boat and go on ahead of him to the other side while he dismissed the crowd. After he dismissed them, he went up on a mountainside by himself to pray. Later that night, he was there alone, and the boat was already a considerable distance from land, buffeted by the waves because the wind was against them. Verse 25, shortly before dawn, Jesus went out to them, walking on the lake. When the disciples saw him walking on the lake, they were terrified. It's a ghost, they said, and cried out in fear. But Jesus immediately said to them, take courage, it is I, don't be afraid. Lord, if it's you, Peter replied, tell me to come to you on the water. Come, he said. Then Peter got down out of the boat, walked on the water, and came toward Jesus. But when he saw the wind, he was afraid, beginning to sink, cried out, Lord, save me. Immediately Jesus reached out his hand and caught him. You of little faith, he said, why did you doubt? And when they climbed into the boat, the wind died down. Then those who were in the boat worshipped him, saying, truly, you are the Son of God. Mark ends it this way. They climbed into the boat with them. Then he climbed into the boat with them, and the wind died down. They were completely amazed, for they had not understood about the loaves. Their hearts were hardened. And remember last week, if you weren't here, just a quick recap. It's also on YouTube if you want to watch it. We said that Jesus wants us to think higher thoughts. Jesus wants us to stop thinking superficially and start thinking supernaturally. He wants us to take what is natural and make it supernatural. That's the way Jesus talks. And last week we looked at the story of the feeding of the 5,000. This big picnic. We learned that most of the miracles that Jesus did were, one person here, maybe two people here, and he would do this incredible thing, and that one person would go out and tell people what had happened to them. Jesus, we learned, blessed what was not enough. Remember that? He blesses something that is not enough to feed this crowd that is in front of him, and he gets this food from a boy that wasn't even counted in the number that we call this story. And so Jesus does this incredible thing in front of a huge, huge crowd, and then he speaks to his disciples and he says, this is my teaching moment for you. Take this basket, all 12 of you, go out and get what is left over. We started with 5 loaves and we started with 2 fish, but now there's all this left over on this mountainside. Take this basket, fill it up, and we'll be on our way. And so they go and they do that. Over 15,000 people, we think, hear what is happening in this moment. And 15,000 people, we go from Jesus healing this guy and healing this girl to 15,000 people saying, look at what happened to me in church today. 15,000 people are saying, we didn't have any food. This little boy came prepared because he had a great mom. Peter stole it, and now we're all fed. That's basically what happened. And then they said, we have 12 baskets left over. Possibly, I think, maybe that there was even more left over after that, because Jesus was trying to teach his disciples something in this moment. And so that kind of catches us up to where we are today. Jesus says, all right, you've cleaned up, you filled up your baskets. What I want you to do, disciples, is go onto the boat, take the baskets with you, leave them on the boat, and start going across the lake so that I can meet you on the other side. I need to dismiss this crowd, and I need to go up on this mountainside to pray. And what happens is Jesus goes away to pray because he knows that this is going to change things. Jesus understands that this is not just that one-time miracle. This is in front of a large crowd. This is different than before. And so what he's doing is he's going to pray because he's preparing for the burden of blessing. Jesus is every time Jesus prayed, he's praying more for the burden that's going to come from the blessing that he's going to give. And so he's preparing himself. He's getting himself ready for what's about to happen because of what he just did. You have to understand this. Jesus is praying all night, and maybe what he's saying to God, he's saying, well, we've done it now. We've started this thing. We've been going for a little bit, and we've been doing some miracles here and there, and our name has been getting famous, but now we've just sent out 15,000 people that are going to tell other people about what just happened, and things are going to change. Things are going to be different now. God, you have to prepare me for what is about to happen. And so he's praying on this mountainside, and he spends so much more time praying for that than he does actually doing ministry. It's easy for us to ask for more. It's easy for us to ask for the blessing. It's a little more difficult for us to understand that what happens when we receive that blessing. It's a little more difficult for us to understand the burden that comes with the blessing that we're asking for. You've been asking for a job. You get the job. Don't complain when you have to go to work. You picked a bunch of classes that you wanted. You got those classes. Don't complain when you get homework that you have to do at night in those classes. You tried out for the team. You made the team. Don't complain when you go to practice and work really hard. Do you understand what I'm saying? You want that place. You want that position. You want whatever that is. Think about what happens when you get that blessing. Think about what happens, because it is a blessing to have that job. It is a blessing to be in that class. It is a blessing to be on that team. But what comes with that? You want that leadership position, but think about the burden that comes with that leadership position. Leadership is a blessing for sure, but think about that burden that comes with it. And so, are you prepared for the consequences of the blessing that Jesus wants to give you in your life? And that's what he's getting his disciples prepared for. That's what he's saying. This is who I am. Remember, we're asking this question, who is Jesus Christ? And he's saying, this is a great teaching opportunity for you, Peter. This is a great opportunity for you, Simon. This is a great opportunity, Andrew, for you to see who I am. We've just done this. You have a basket full of stuff. Now get on the boat, take those baskets, and go across, and I will meet you over there. Jesus is praying, and he prays for a long time. And the sun is down, and the temperature is changing, and the wind is picking up, and there's a storm brewing over the Sea of Galilee. And so what we have here is Jesus on the mountain, the disciples halfway across the lake, and even though they are that distance away, Jesus still knows what they need in that moment. Because let's just take a second and here's some big words. Omnipresence. Our God is omnipresent. He is everywhere. His omnipotence. He knows, or he's all powerful. And this last one, omniscient. There's not a test, don't worry. Peter probably won't ask us when we get to the gates, and what does this word mean? Oh, what does it mean in Greek? Yeah, it's cool to know, but omniscient. This is the one that I want to touch on a little bit, omniscient. It means he's all-knowing. It means God knows. It means God knows everything that you can't tell him. Everything that you don't want him to know, he already knows, and he wants to help. God knows. He knows what you need, what you're going through, what storms are happening in your life right now, how much of that storm you can handle, what you can do to get out of that storm, what you need to get from that storm. He knows how you're dealing with things. God knows, and he cares. It doesn't matter the distance. He knows and he cares and he's with you. And sometimes we think we have to do special things in order for God to hear us in a special way, and he doesn't answer us the way we want, and we say, God, why I asked you for this, why didn't you answer for me? Or I wanted you to do this, but you didn't do that. God is not a genie. He's not our butler, and he's certainly not the big man upstairs. Don't get me started on that one. I understand God's our friend and Jesus is our friend. It says that in the Bible, but he is not the big man upstairs. We're not even close to the same level of who Jesus is to even refer to him to that. That's just my little soapbox. So you decide how you want to do that. But to me, he's not the big man upstairs. God knows what you need and when you need it. He's in control and he's got you right where you're supposed to be. Now, let me get off of that soapbox. We're in the middle of this storm, which is a problem. Jesus is on the mountain, a considerable distance away from the disciples. It's dark, it's windy, it's cold. The problem, we'll say, is over here, the lake. And the power is way over here, Jesus on the mountain. And everything in between is an obstacle or something trying to keep the power from getting to the problem, because when the power can't get to the problem, then we can't have a miracle to fix that problem. And so we have things like distance, we have things like darkness, we have things like danger and waves and wind and rain but God knows and God, when he wants to make his move, he will make his move in due time. Are you following me? Have you ever experienced this before? It doesn't matter how far the distance is for God. It doesn't matter how dark the night is for God. It doesn't matter the obstacles that are in the way for God, because when God is ready to do something, he doesn't need a boat on a dock to row to you to get to you. He's a God, our God is a God that walks on our problems. He walks on the things that are trying to drown us. Jesus is walking on the water. He's walking on the things that the disciples think are going to kill them. Are you following me on that? I need a little bit of response. I mean, I can try to get louder. I can try to yell. My throat's a little scratchy tonight, but I can do something. Like, do you want me to jump up and down? Like, Jesus is walking on the thing that is trying to drown them. Jesus, our God, walks on the things that scare us, that freak us out. And Jesus is like, that's just my sidewalk. That's just the thing that I do to get to you so that I can help you. Like, you're so afraid, but that's just the way that I get to you to help you, to get you through what you're going through. Jesus comes walking on the lake in the middle of the night, in the middle of the storm. Let's go back to the book of Mark. We find what Jesus actually intended to do when he was walking on the lake. In Mark 6, starting in verse 48, it says, he saw the disciples straining at the oars because the wind was against them. Shortly before dawn, he went out to them, walking on the lake. He was about to pass by them. What? His friends, his people that he's trying to see, I am Jesus Christ, I'm the Savior of the world. He's just going to, you guys getting a good workout in today? Like, I'll see you on the other side. He was about to pass them by, but when they saw him walking on the lake, they thought he was a ghost. They cried out because they all saw him and were terrified. Immediately he spoke to them and said, take courage, it is I, don't be afraid. Is that not weird to you that Jesus wasn't going out to save them? Jesus was actually going out and going to pass by them. Maybe give a little wave. Maybe say, watch this. Do a moonwalk by them. Like, remember, this is his sidewalk. He's just getting across. He didn't want to go around the lake. He's just going to go across the lake. You guys are not working. You're already on Labor Day time. But Jesus was about to pass them by. The disciples cried out, it's a ghost. Sometimes God is going to show up in our life in a form that we weren't expecting him to come in. Sometimes, And this is what religion says, is Jesus has to come in wearing this, sounding like this, speaking like this, talking like this, doing things like this, giving me things when I need this. And when I ask things, I expect things to happen in this way. But sometimes God is going to show up in your life in a way that you were not expecting. Sometimes God is going to show up in your life in a way that nobody has experienced before. And sometimes the answer to your problem, sometimes the answer to your situation is going to be in a package, is going to be in a service that you were not expecting Jesus to show up in. And we have to be ready, and we have to be able to say, maybe this is Jesus coming into my life. Maybe this is what my answer was, even though it's not in a church, even though it's not in this guy in a nice flowy white gown thing with a blue sash. I don't know why he always wore a blue sash. Maybe it's in the Bible and I just missed it, but I don't know. But that's what all the pictures are. I'm not going to bash that because that's our new curriculum in the Critters class, so that's what he looks like. If you want to find out more, I know a guy that can get you involved. Jesus is saying, think bigger. Jesus is saying, I'm not going to just come in this one particular place, in this one particular way, in this way that you're expecting me to come in all the time. Yeah, we come in expecting Jesus, but I expect Jesus in many different ways, and I'm looking around all over the place. Where are you, Jesus? I know you're in here. Show yourself to me, because I want to see you. I want to feel you. I want to know you. I want to experience you. Jesus is saying, think bigger. God is going to show up in your life in many, many different ways. Jesus was about to pass them by until they cried out. This is very interesting, because I always thought that Jesus is going to come in and save the day. Oh no, what am I going to do? It's Jesus, I'm come to save the day, like some superhero or whatever. But what we're finding out here is we have a responsibility. We have some responsibility to take in fixing our problems. We have a responsibility to put ourselves in the right position to receive the power that Jesus wants us to have. Jesus would have walked right on by if they would have not cried out. Yeah, they're crying, it's a ghost, it's a ghost. They're probably saying, Jesus, where are you? We need you right now. And that's when he says, hey, don't worry, it's just me. It's just me. You'll be all right. Think about this, the woman with the issue of blood, she would still be bleeding if she wouldn't have crawled through the crowd to touch the hem of Jesus' garment. Blind Bartimaeus, he would still be blind if he wasn't shouting, Jesus, I know you're walking right past me. Come over here. Many other blind people, Jesus, come spit in my eyes. I bet they weren't expecting Jesus to show up in that form, were they? We have a responsibility to cry out to Jesus. We have a responsibility to invite Jesus into our situations. But maybe write this down. Jesus can't bring power to our problems when we enjoy being in them. If we're having too much fun in our issues, if we're having too much fun in our sin, if we're having too much fun in the problems that we're in, Jesus isn't going to just show up out of nowhere. He wants to be invited into that. Jesus can't bring power into our problems when we enjoy being in them. He has to be invited. It's a ghost, they cried, and Jesus said, take courage, it is I, don't be afraid. The disciples look at each other. What? Is that Jesus? Nah, that's not Jesus. Then Peter, the one that usually speaks up first, he says this, Lord, if it's you, tell me to come out and walk on this water that you're walking on, that I should not be able to. Lord, if this is you, tell me to walk on this water. And Jesus says, come. And then in Matthew it says Peter got down out of the boat, walked on water, came toward Jesus, But when he saw the wind and the waves, he was afraid. Beginning to sink, cried out, Lord, save me. Immediately Jesus reached out his hand, caught him. You of little faith, why did you doubt? See, I don't have time to talk about Peter, his experience of being on the water walking team. I don't have time to talk about the amount of faith that it took for him to go out and step out of the boat. I don't have time for you to understand that it was so foggy and they couldn't see Jesus. You know how sometimes you can see people walking and by their walk you know that it's that person or they're running or the way their shadow is cast, but it's so foggy on the lake they can't see this person coming. They just see this blurry silhouette coming to them, probably lit up because he was just spending time with God and he's just glowing because of the time that he spent with his Father. I don't have time to make you understand that Peter is walking on one word, come. Peter is walking by faith and not by sight in this moment. He couldn't see Jesus. He couldn't make out his face. He didn't know it was him. And yet Jesus says, come, and Peter gets out of the boat based on one word that Jesus says. And Jesus says, my sheep know my voice, and they will follow me. But I don't have time to tell you that. That's not what I want to focus on. This is what I want to focus on, Matthew 14:32. And when they climbed into the boat, the wind died down. Because wait a minute, this storm, I don't think was any storm at all. This storm was actually a test by Jesus helping his disciples to once again figure out who he actually is. Jesus sent the disciples on the boat across the lake knowing that a storm was going to come. Go out ahead of me. I didn't think God sent us out into storms. Well, apparently he does sometimes because he wants us to see that he is in control. Jesus didn't say, wind, be quiet, storm, go away. All he did was step into the boat and everything went silent. And the disciples looked around and they said, whoa, what was that? And Jesus wasn't frustrated that they were scared. He wasn't frustrated that they were in a storm. Jesus, I think, was frustrated in this moment because he wanted them to understand who he was. And he did this incredible miracle at dinner time, and they had totally forgotten about who he was by the time they were halfway across the lake, thinking they're going to die. They get back into the boat, the storm goes away, and immediately they fall on their faces and say, truly, you are the Son of God. Truly, you are the Son of God. Because they step out into the boat and it's super quiet. And again, they're looking at each other. Is this really Jesus? And the disciples are looking at each other and they're going back and forth and they look back at Jesus. And then they see the basket of the leftovers. And they say, truly you are the Son of God. I had forgotten what you just did 6 hours ago, but this is my reminder in this basket of what you did. You took care of us in this moment. We thought we were going to pass out because we were so hungry in that moment. And you told us to take this basket and go pick up the leftovers and bring it with us. Why would we have to bring these leftovers with us if we didn't have anything in the first place and you fed us? Why would we have to have anything next time for you to feed us? I don't think the leftovers were there for them to have lunch the next day. I think the leftovers were in the boat with the disciples to be a reminder of I am Jesus and I am the bread of life. And they fall on their face and they worship him saying, truly you are the Son of God. And they said that for the very first time in that moment. And in that moment, they understood what Jesus was about to say to the crowd on the other side of the lake. Because Jesus meets with this crowd and they want to see him do another crazy miracle. And he says, I am the bread of life. If I'm in you and you are in me, you have enough. You are enough. If I'm in you and you are in me, you will always be enough. And so Jesus puts them through this storm as a reminder, as a lesson of who I am. And here's my final point. God never intends to put you through something without you getting something out of it. God never intends to put you through something without you getting something out of it. What is in your basket that God wants you to use as a reminder of who He is? What's in your basket as a reminder of, yeah, I went through this before, I was in this position before, and I got through it because of Him, and now I'm in this situation, and I don't know how I'm going to get through it, but you can look through your basket and say, remember when He did that for me then? Maybe, probably, yeah, He's going to do something for me now in this situation for my future. Jesus is getting His disciples ready for what it's going to take for them to be in ministry. Jesus is making leaders out of these disciples. He's saying, this is what it's going to take. He's saying, this leadership blessing that you're about to get, it's a blessing for sure, but you're going to experience the burden of this blessing. Are you going to count the cost of what it's going to take to follow me? Are you going to count the cost of what it's going to take to spread my name to the people? Because I'm not going to be with you forever. Do you have what it takes, Peter? Do you have what it takes, Andrew, to do this? And Jesus is asking, are you in a position to receive the blessing that He has for you? And are you ready for the burden of that blessing that He wants to pour out on you? And He's asking you, do you believe that I am your bread? Let's pray. God, we thank you for who you are. And God, we thank you for being patient with us and for showing us who you are over and over and over again, because, God, we need it. And, God, we want it. God, we believe that you are the bread of life. God, we believe that you are the one that can calm the wind and the waves. God, we believe that you will snatch us back up when we say, Lord, save me. And God, we're sorry for the times where we take our eyes off of you and start sinking, but God, we know that you're going to be there for us. And God, we thank you for that power. We thank you that you live in us. We thank you that you love us. God, give us more power, more boldness, more courage. Lord, I pray for the conversations that are going to happen tonight, that we would just grow closer to you, that we would understand you more, and that we would know who is Jesus Christ. Pray this in your name. Amen.